The Trump administration's overhaul of the public service loan forgiveness program is facing new legal challenges from states and cities across the country. Critics say the changes unfairly limit eligibility for teachers, firefighters, and other public servants who are promised debt relief. Supporters argue the reform makes the program more accountable and fiscally sound. Joining us now is attorney, political strategist, and host of the Crisis Files podcast, Roshini Rajkumar. Good morning. How are you?
Hi, Kevin. Great to be with you.
Hey, thanks for being here. So I look at this and I worry about spending and I feel like with student loans, if you took the loans, you should pay them back. But I don't know. I worry that like if people were promised by one administration that something was going to happen, and then the next administration comes in and pulls the rug out, I don't know how I feel about that. When you look at this, how do you look at it?
Right. Well, I don't think it's going to pass legal muster because really what's happening here is pulling, like you say, pulling the rug out from under them and making something more restrictive. So if in good faith you took on one of these professions or you took on certain debt, knowing that, okay, I go and do this public service for a while, this will be paid off or at least partially forgiven, you shouldn't years later, when you're living according to the rules that were set, have to be worried that there would be some kind of penalty. So as I have been reading about this, I am finding it not passing any kind of legal muster. And that's the thing. I mean, it's also a power of the purse issue. And these are some of the items that I question why Donald Trump wants on his plate. They're not necessarily supposed to be on the president's plate. They are more a legislative function. They are a legislative function over an executive administration or part of the executive function. So I don't know that we all need to get too crazed about this. It would be shocking to me if this stands up in court, if it gets that far.
Yeah. So if there might be two different things here. I'm not sure because I haven't looked at it that closely. But I wonder if there are two things. If one, you took a career and said, I'm going to go into whatever, it'd be like you could say the military or nursing or whatever it is, and you knew that when you went into this career that you were going to be promised a reduction in your student loans or no student loans at all or whatever the deal was. I see that as one thing. But if you were just in a career, you're an EMS worker or a firefighter, and then a president like Joe Biden says, hey, you know what? I'm a big fan of first responders. I'm going to erase all your loans. Like they didn't go into the career knowing they were going to get it. They just got it erased by one administration or the other. Would that change anything legally? Or once an administration said, look, we're going to wipe these out for you, that's the end of it legally?
How we usually look at things, and definitely the law does, is it a penalty or is it, let's say, a reward, the opposite of penalty? Let's say it's a reward. Most of the time when you penalize citizens, taxpayers, working people, that's really questioned. And as it should be, if you do something for the good of the public in one of these careers and you were promised and you fit certain other income guidelines, things like that, then you should not have to worry about a penalty down the line. Now, the reward situation is a little different. If there's good behavior or if all of a sudden, someone, in this case you're mentioning in your example, former President Biden decides to do this, what we would question legally is, does Joe Biden have the authority constitutionally to do that? And our Constitution says your specific example, Kevin, is the power of the purse. That's back to the legislature. So there was some, this kind of stuff was happening under Biden, and some of why a lot of it was knocked down and the Supreme Court wouldn't allow it is because that was the power of the purse. The Congress is to act if something like that were to happen. But we definitely question anything that looks like penalty or penalizing with much more scrutiny. And I believe that's always a good thing. The other piece of this that we might look at and hear about down the line is what's the current state of your economic situation? Did you take a different job? Did you cut out of, like, instead of 3 years, you only did 2 years as a nurse or a doctor or an EMT or a teacher or an EMT? Then that would change your ability to get some of it reconciled or forgiven. But if all things are the same from when you went into that program, it should not be pulled out from under you.
I'm wondering if this is the whole student loan forgiveness issue is a winning or a losing political issue. I know Joe Biden pushed hard. Bernie Sanders started it originally. We're going to wipe out student debt, and the young voters were like fired up, and everybody said, "Look, this is this is gonna bring the young vote, and this is going to be great." But there's also there are young people who took all this debt and they're drowning in debt and they need some sort of help. I mean, they're living in their parents' basements and maybe that's what they need to do. I don't know. But there's also on the flip side of this, there's all these people who went to college and they paid their way through. They got jobs and they worked their way through and they paid off their loans and then there's people who didn't go to college at all and they're working and they're saying, "Well, why would my tax dollars go to pay for someone else to go to college, when I didn't even get to go to college? Maybe you could help me pay off my small business loan or something like that." And when I think about the politics of it all, I'm not sure it's an issue either side would want to get into.
It is not a winning issue because if someone takes on debt and they go into it knowing it's going to be a question mark whether I can pay this debt back. I mean, think about a car loan, a house loan. Apply that same logic. You don't go and buy a $3 million home and try to get financing for it. In fact, any good bank shouldn't give you financing for that if you don't stack up with your income. The same should apply for student loans. Your co-taxpayers, years later, decades from now, should not have to bail you out. Also, Kevin, there's been a lot of fraud and bad behavior when people are either given a little break from paying on their loans or interest is, as we saw during COVID, interest didn't accumulate. I know of many stories of people who then spent more, took out more tax lines. I've heard people say they will allow themselves to die, and then your debt is automatically forgiven if you've gotten a student loan, rather than pay it back, even when they're sitting in a position financially to pay it back. And to me, that is fraud, and that is terrible. So it is not a winning issue. It's not a winning topic. And anything with student loans really needs to be looked at and applied equally.
What would you recommend people do if they're looking at the courts and wondering what's going to happen if these loans are going to be forgiven or not? You get offers in the mail every day from private companies. We'll buy your loan and give you a lower interest rate and you can pay it off faster. But if you do that, you're no longer in the federal loan program. And some people I think are waiting and not even paying their loans because they're hoping they'll just go away and they're not even paying them down.
Right. Well, if you just listen to what you said, the common sense says they're not going to pay their loans, right? When I had a car payment on my car, if I had just decided not to send my check or not to get automatically deducted every month, the car company that held that loan would have come after me. They would have found a way to get their money.
Right.
Yeah, there would be no car. The repo guy would be
Right.
there at my door. So let's think about that, people, when it comes to the whole world of student loan. And the fact is there are a lot of middle class and wealthy families that are having their kids take out student loans. And I'm not saying they're evil and trying to do ill will,
Right.
but if that young person doesn't know they need to pay that back, they're going down a fraudulent path.
Absolutely. Roshini Rajkumar, attorney, political strategist, and host of the Crisis Files podcast. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Kevin.